You probably think pirates feared cannonballs and navy ships the most. But out on the open sea, their deadliest enemy was the cold. One freezing night could wipe out an entire crew faster than a battle ever could. And yet they survived. Not by luck, but through clever, brutal, and sometimes bizarre survival techniques. Today, you're going to discover how pirates fought the cold with everything from wool socks and salted pork to heated cannonballs. If you found this video fascinating and want more raw, untold stories of how pirates really lived beyond the myths, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Like the video if you learned something new, and drop a comment below. Which cold survival trick surprised you the most? We've only scratched the surface. More hidden pirate truths are just over the horizon.
Pirates faced storms, cannonballs, and angry captains, but nothing was more brutal than the cold. Out there on the open sea, warmth wasn't just about comfort, it was survival. One freezing night could take down an entire crew faster than a sword fight. So how did they stay alive when temperatures dropped? It started with what they wore. Pirates weren't just throwing on random rags. They had a system, a smart layering approach that would impress even today's survivalists. First, a thin linen shirt to wick away sweat and keep the skin dry. Then came wool, vests, shirts, even pants, trapping body heat where it mattered most. Finally, the outer layer. Leather coats or oilcloth jackets helped block wind and sea spray. Pirates may have looked bulky hauling rope around the deck, but those extra layers kept them alive. Getting wet was a serious threat. A soaked pirate could be dead within hours if they didn't have a plan. That's where wool came in, the miracle fabric of the sea. Even when soaked, it retained about 60% of its insulating power. Pirates wouldn't strip out of wet clothes. They'd wring them out and hang them near makeshift clotheslines below deck and put them back on damp rather than risk going bare in the cold. And what about those iconic pirate hats? Sure, they looked flashy, but they were also incredibly practical. Tricorn hats had wide brims that redirected rain away from faces and necks. Underneath, pirates often wore snug-fitting caps or bandanas that kept their ears warm and locked in body heat. Turns out the old saying, "a cold head means a dead man," wasn't just superstition. We lose up to 25% of our body heat through our heads. Covering it up, that saved lives. Then there were the socks. On a freezing night, a dry pair of socks was worth more than a handful of gold coins. Pirates hoarded them. They stuffed their boots with straw or cloth, layered on multiple pairs, and even fought over them. One pirate ship's loot list actually included socks, right alongside rum and weapons. And when they raided a Spanish merchant ship near Cuba, the first thing they grabbed, dry wool socks from the captain's room. Not treasure, socks. Hands were another weak point. Lose the use of your fingers, and you couldn't tie knots or swing a sword. Pirates crafted mittens from scraps of leather or wool. Some even left the trigger finger exposed for battle readiness. Others coated their hands in whale oil or animal fat before gloving up, creating a natural barrier against the cold. When pirates captured military ships, the clothing on board wasn't just a cool souvenir, it was a lifesaver. British Navy coats and boots were made from high-quality wool and leather. Pirates didn't care about the insignias. If it kept them warm, they wore it, even if it meant flying the colors of 3 different navies at once. But even when the best clothes weren't enough, Pirates got creative. They huddled together in the warmest part of the ship. Personal space, that was a summer luxury. Some captains even handed out blankets and furs that were supposed to be sold at the next port. In desperate moments, they'd heat up cannonballs in the galley fire, wrap them in rags, and tuck them near sleeping spots to radiate heat. Everything they did, every lair, every heated object, wasn't about comfort, it was about survival. A crew too cold to move couldn't fight, couldn't sail, and couldn't survive a storm. That's why experienced pirate captains treated warmth with the same urgency as food and ammunition. And speaking of food, staying warm wasn't just about what they wore, it was also about what they ate. Pirates figured out early on that food could fuel the fire inside. It wasn't just calories, it was heat. Spicy food became winter gold. Hot peppers plundered from Caribbean raids weren't just for flavor. They made the body flush and raise its temperature. The cook would save the hottest ones for the coldest nights, not for taste, for survival. Salted meat, already a staple on ships, also became crucial. It was packed with protein, which the body worked hard to digest, generating heat in the process. During colder voyages, pirates would double up on salt pork and beef. Same went for ship biscuits. These hard-as-rock chunks of carbs burned slow and gave long-lasting energy, perfect for enduring night watches. But let's talk about the biggest myth of all, rum. Everyone thinks pirates drank it to stay warm, and yeah, it's felt like it worked. That burning down your throat gave the illusion of warmth. But it was a trick. In reality, alcohol pushes warm blood to your skin's surface, where the heat escapes faster. You feel warm right until you freeze. Savvy captains knew the truth. On freezing voyages, they watered down the rum, not to be stingy, but to save lives. Too many pirates passed out with a belly full of rum and never woke up. Still, hot drinks made a difference. Pirates brewed crude teas using herbs they scavenged or traded for. Add some stolen molasses or honey, and it became a legit internal heater. No fancy insulated mugs back then, just wooden bowls held tight in frozen hands, soaking up every bit of warmth. But cooking hot meals on a wooden ship, that was a risky business. Open flames on a dry timber deck were a recipe for disaster. So pirates used enclosed metal braziers, little portable fire containers placed on sand or stone in the galley. They were watched like hawks. If fire got loose, the whole ship could go up in smoke. Ships that couldn't risk fire cooked ahead in port. Stews and soups were made in bulk, stored in barrels, and reheated, or eaten cold over the next few days. Some pirates would even warm food by tucking it into their shirts, using body heat to make it just edible enough. They had tricks for cold utensils, too. Heat a metal spoon near the lantern, then dip it into the stew. Instant warmth, even if it only lasted a few bites. Sharing helped, too. Big communal pots stayed warmer than small bowls. Pirates gathered around, dipping straight in with their spoons. Germs? That was tomorrow's problem. Warmth came first. In cold weather, meals became strategy. The hottest, most filling meal was served right before the night shift. Warm food meant warmer bodies on deck. Crew standing watch might even get a hot brick wrapped in cloth, like an old-school hand warmer. And during truly cold winters, captains weren't afraid to hand out extra rations. A full belly fought off frostbite better than any hat or glove. Records show that some pirate ships increased winter food portions by up to 20%, not because they were generous, but because they were smart.
While warm clothes and hearty meals kept pirates alive, they needed more than that to beat the brutal cold. Sometimes the only way to survive was to create heat from scratch, and do it without burning the whole ship down.
That's the dangerous balancing act pirates mastered, how to stay warm on a wooden ship without accidentally setting it on fire. Sailing ships were basically giant tinder boxes full of dried timber, tarred rope, and canvas sails. One loose ember and the entire vessel could become a floating fireball. In fact, early 18th century records suggest that nearly 1 in 20 ships lost at sea went down not from storms or battles, but from accidental fires, often started by desperate attempts to stay warm. As pirates used to say, "Fire keeps you warm once, but drowning keeps you cold forever." To stay safe, pirates used specially made containers called braziers, basically small metal fire pits with lids and ventilation holes. These let heat out while trapping sparks inside. Braziers were usually made from scrap metal or stolen goods and became prized tools on colder voyages. Messing with one could get you into serious trouble. One distracted cabin boy who forgot to close a brazier lid could doom the entire crew. And let's just say, he wouldn't get a second chance. Pirates also made clever use of what they already had. Lanterns that lit the ship at night doubled as mini heaters. During cold night watches, crew members would crowd around navigation lanterns to warm their hands. Some ships even had rotating lantern duty schedules, where pirates took turns standing by the warmest light source. One journal even described this as a kind of lantern dance, sailors shuffling in circles to get a quick hit of heat, much to the frustration of the ship's navigator, who apparently threatened mutiny if the dancing didn't stop. But pirates weren't above using their weapons for warmth either. Cannonballs, usually tools of destruction, became heat sources. The ship's cook would heat them in the galley fire, then wrap them in cloth and place them in sleeping quarters. A single cannonball could radiate heat for hours. It was the pirate version of a hot water bottle, heavy but life-saving. Carpenters had their own trick. They'd heat up their tools during the day and tuck warm hammers or mallets into their hammocks at night to keep the chill at bay. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. And when push came to shove, pirates did what modern survival experts now recommend. They huddled, literally, packed together in tight groups below deck, using shared body heat to survive the night. This wasn't just about being cozy, it was strategy. In freezing conditions, up to 6 pirates might sleep in a tight circle, switching spots during the night so nobody had to spend too long on the cold outer edge. Studies today show that shared body heat can raise the effective temperature by as much as 15 degrees. Luxury items from stolen ships also played a surprising role. Rich furs, thick rugs, and decorative tapestries, meant for high society, were repurposed as insulation. One pirate captain was even reported to have used an entire shipment of stolen silk as wall padding in the crew's quarters, both to keep his men warm and to destroy the evidence. Even the ship's own design offered heat in strange ways. The galley, with its steady cooking fires, was the heart of heat on board. Areas near the center of the ship, especially below the waterline, stayed warmer and more stable. Pirates knew this and would rotate sleep spots based on who had the roughest night watch or the hardest jobs. Ship modifications weren't unusual either. Pirates who operated in colder waters often changed their ships to survive. Captured vessels were retrofitted with canvas walls and partitions to trap warm air. Smaller spaces meant better heat retention. In fact, the most sought-after pirate ships during winter were ones with enclosed captain's quarters, not because they were fancy, but because they were warm. Some even joked that winter was the real reason for so many mutinies. When the cold hit hard, everyone suddenly wanted that cozy captain's cabin. Water, ironically, sometimes helped too.
Sea temperatures don't drop below freezing, even when the air does. Pirates figured out how to use this thermal mass to their advantage. They would rig tarps to catch seawater and funnel it into containers stored in the ship's belly. As the water slowly warmed up to the air's temperature, it released heat. Not much, but just enough to make a difference in tight quarters. But none of this worked without vigilance. There were no thermostats on pirate ships. Keeping warm required constant effort. Part of each watch involved checking on braziers, rotating cannonballs, and watching for stray embers. The fire watcher was a real job, usually given to the newest crew member, and falling asleep on the job could mean death for everyone on board. Still, heat sources were only part of the solution. Pirates knew that the cold didn't just come from outside. It crept into your bones, drained your strength, and made you useless. So they kept moving. A still pirate was a frozen pirate. And unlike Navy ships, where sailors might sit idle during calm seas, pirate ships moved on purpose. Movement became part of survival. Daily shipwork became part of the strategy. Hoisting sails wasn't just a task, it was a full-body workout. When the cold got bad, captains would order unnecessary sail adjustments just to keep their men moving. One logbook even recorded a captain ordering the mainsail raised and lowered 7 times in one morning. His excuse? Can't decide on the weather. The truth? He was keeping his men alive. Deck scrubbing, usually a punishment or chore, became a daily workout. Pirates bent, crawled, and scoured the deck, not for cleanliness, but to get blood flowing to their fingers and toes. Some crews even had rules. 1 hour of scrubbing a day, every day, for everyone. The result? Pirate ships in cold waters had the cleanest decks in the Atlantic. Even climbing became a heat tactic. Scaling the ropes to adjust sails worked the entire body. Lookout duties in the crow's nest, typically the coldest spot on the ship, were limited to 15-minute shifts. But the climb up and down, that got the blood pumping more than anything. Fighting was another way to stay warm. Pirates trained constantly, with swords, knives, and even bare hands. Sparring sessions doubled as physical training and as warm-ups. Some captains even timed attacks around temperature drops, knowing that a good fight got the crew fired up, literally. Several pirate journals mention skirmishes that left everyone sweating, even in near-freezing weather. And then there was dancing. Yeah, dancing. Sea shanties weren't just fun work songs. They were beats for stumping, spinning, and jumping. The hornpipe hustle became famous on pirate ships, a kind of frenzied dance that left men dripping with sweat despite the icy winds. There's a reason the most energetic pirate dances came from cold northern waters, not because they had better rhythm, but because they needed it to survive. Below deck, pirates made up their own mini workout routines. Push-ups, squats, arm wrestling, anything to keep the blood moving. One pirate's journal even described daily strength competitions with extra rum rations as the prize. The result? A crew that stayed fit, warm, and motivated, even in the worst weather. Rowing, normally a dreaded task, became a reward in winter. The full-body effort of rowing a small boat from ship to shore warmed a pirate faster than any coat. Smart captains rotated the coldest crew members into rowing duty just to thaw them out. And when all else failed, combat itself was the ultimate heater. No one felt cold during a sword fight. The adrenaline, the movement, the tension, it overpowered the cold completely. Some pirate raids were launched not for loot, but to shake off the frostbite.
Even sleep wasn't a passive activity on a pirate ship. When temperatures dropped, pirates developed routines to generate body heat before they climbed into their hammocks. A few quick squats, some arm swings, maybe a little jog in place,
anything to get the blood flowing. The goal? Fall asleep before the cold caught up. Those standing night watch had it even harder. They had to stay alert and stay warm. So they created silent routines, squats, marching in place, swinging their arms, repeated every 15 minutes. These exercises kept the cold from sinking in and doubled as a way to stay sharp during long, dark shifts. But even the most active pirate couldn't stay in motion forever. Eventually, they needed real relief, a break from the constant wind, freezing spray, and icy nights. And this is where pirate freedom gave them a real edge. Unlike Navy ships, which were locked into patrol routes or long missions, pirates could choose where they went. They weren't bound by duty or orders, and that meant they could follow the warmth. Many pirate crews actually planned their entire sailing calendar around the seasons. As fall crept in, they'd steer south, avoiding the harshest weather. Caribbean waters became pirate hotspots during winter, and not because of the rum. It was warm, and that meant it was safe. Records show that attacks in the Caribbean increased by over 60% between December and February. Not because pirates were suddenly more aggressive, they were just following the sun. So many ships clustered near Jamaica and the Bahamas in the winter that locals joked that you could walk from island to island by stepping across pirate decks. Maybe that's even why Caribbean cuisine got so spicy. Not just to preserve food, but to keep all those shivering pirates sweating. This migration wasn't just smart, it saved lives. Pirate ships that stayed in cold northern waters lost up to 20% of their crew each winter to cold-related issues. Those that sailed south, they kept nearly all their crew alive, losing only a few to combat or drinking mishaps. But when pirates couldn't avoid the cold entirely, they got strategic about land stops. Unlike military vessels, which might be at sea for months, pirate ships rarely went more than 2 weeks without touching land during winter. They mapped out the warmest, most sheltered harbors. They shared information about coves, bays, and friendly ports where they could rest, warm up, and restock. Taverns, surprisingly, played a huge role in winter survival. These weren't just places to drink and gamble. They were lifelines. Warm fires, hot food, dry shelter. A single night in a good tavern could make all the difference. Pirates often saved special coins just for winter tavern stops, knowing that a few hours by a roaring fire might be the reason they woke up the next morning. And when no towns were nearby, pirates set up their own makeshift camps. They'd use sails from the ship to create windbreaks between trees, angled just right to catch the sun while blocking icy gusts. Stolen goods came in handy here too. Fine furniture from captured merchant ships, chopped up and tossed into the fire. Expensive rugs thrown on the ground as makeshift floors. Pirates weren't concerned with luxury. They were concerned with not dying. There are even reports of pirates huddled around a campfire in the woods, wrapped in a silk dressing gown looted from a noblewoman's wardrobe. Was it ridiculous? Absolutely. But it beat freezing with dignity. Some crews went even further. They returned to the same hidden islands every winter and built simple huts, often dug into hillsides for insulation. These seasonal shelters could be reused year after year. It wasn't just survival, it was planning. What made pirates truly remarkable wasn't just their toughness, it was their ability to adapt. They weren't out there in perfect uniforms with central heating. They were freezing, wet, and often sick. But they came up with real strategies based on experience, instinct, and necessity to survive the harshest conditions nature could throw at them. Their cold survival game wasn't random. It followed 5 key strategies: smart clothing, layered, insulated, and water-resistant gear kept them warm even when soaked. Strategic eating, high protein, high carb, and spicy foods fueled their internal furnaces. Innovative heat sources, heated cannonballs, enclosed braziers, and even warm tools were repurposed as pirate heaters. Constant movement, work, training, and even dance were all weapons against the cold. Seasonal navigation. Pirates didn't fight the cold if they didn't have to. They outsmarted it by chasing the sun. Together, these tactics formed a complete system, not of comfort, but of survival. Pirates weren't lucky. They weren't reckless. They were problem solvers. So the next time you think of pirates as lawless rogues with rum in one hand and a sword in the other, remember this: they were also inventors of their own survival science. They figured out how to stay warm in the most unforgiving conditions on Earth, with no guidebook, no gear sponsors, and no margin for error. They didn't just fight storms and battles. They fought the cold. And they won.